All right, guys, I thought I'd give a brief week 9 and week 10 sort of combined video this week. After the midterm, I still have some midterm essays left to grade. I hope to have those graded by this time next week, if not sooner. So you should start to see, hopefully, your grade either increasing and not so much decreasing. There might be some SA3s I still need to grade. So you're going to get a whole bunch of grades coming up here in the next few days. So definitely double check to see what your weighted total is. Remember, since we're heading into week 10 next week, if you're at a point where your grade is relatively low and you don't think that you're going to be able to pull it up, you might want to think about possibly withdrawing from the course. I know some folks don't like to hear that, but it may just be in your best interest that you're able to, you may need to do that at certain points in your college career just because either you got a lot going on with other classes, work, family. Um, I would, definitely try to stick it out if you can because you don't really want to have to come back and retake this class, during the summer or the fall or whatever the case may be, just because it's going to delay a lot of stuff as it relates to your graduation. So I'm looking at the grades now. I'm going to go to see what we got going on here. Um, there's roughly about 21 students in this class. We have two people that have a 90 or higher, which is an A, which is, good. Keep the good work up. We have 8 students that have a B, which is between 80 and 89. We have 4 students who have a C between 70 and 79. We have 5 students who have a D between 60 and 69. And then we have 1 student who has an F between 50 and 59. There's another student who has an F that's between 30 and 39. So, I would say if you're between, 0 and 59, especially going into week 10 out of a, 15 or 16 week semester, you may want to consider possibly dropping unless you think you can pull that grade up. Um, you may have a better chance if you're between 50 and 59 to get it up to a C range. If you're 30 or 39, I don't know if you're going to be even able to pull that up to a 70 at this point. Even if you make 100 on everything on here on out, which, that's going to be sort of impossible to do. Um, for those, I mean, really, the thing with grades, the math goes like this. Let's say you have a 94 in the class. If you want to keep that 94, you have to make 95 or higher in everything that we have from here on out. Otherwise, you start making lower than a 94, it's going to drop it some. Now, again, if you make an 88 or 89, is it going to drop you from your low A to your high B? Possibly. If you have a 94 and you start making 74s, yes, it's going to drop you. Zeros are bad. That's probably part of the reason why we have the 5 Ds and the 2 Fs at this point. So if you look at it that way, Ds are not really considering passing, Fs are definitely failing. So in the long scheme at this point with 21, there's 7 who are basically either failing or not passing this course. So for each 0 that you make, it basically brings you down about 20 points or 2 letter grades. You make 2 and you basically go from an A to a D. You make 3, you go from an A to an F. Anything after 3, you're basically sitting, around that 0 mark because we can't give negative numbers. If we could give negative numbers, 4 or more zeros will put you in the negatives. So if you kind of look at it that way, that's what you need to sort of gauge whether you should maybe start the process of withdrawing if you need to withdraw, or don't make zeros if you are passing, right? 70s, 80s, 90s, that type deal, because the zeros are going to hurt you. The last bit of the, really the last 2 months of our course is the heavy-ended stuff. We're going to talk about the research paper here and the multiple components that go with it. The first component or the first stage is going to be your research paper proposal. The second stage will be the research paper annotated bibs. We'll probably start talking about those during week 11 because there's going to be like 3 weeks that we're going to have to deal with the annotated bibs, and then you actually have the research paper itself, drafting it and then finalizing it by really the last, I think it's that last Sunday in April. So the next few weeks are not going to be too terribly easy, especially if you like to procrastinate and wait till the last minute. You can't really do that, with the next 4 or 5 weeks. We're going to have a spring break the first week of April. So instead of really having 8 weeks left, we're only going to have about 7. So, I mean, a lot of things are going to be coming up, especially if you're taking multiple classes. You're going to have, additional tests, exams, and that type deal coming up for those. So the next 7 or 8 weeks are not going to be ones that you want to sort of, lay out, especially as spring break comes. We spring forward this Sunday. So as we get from March to April to May, our daylight's going to extend a little bit. Our temperatures are going to start warming up. If you got kids, they got spring break and stuff like that, planning summer trips, spring break trips, and whatever else. So you just don't want to sort of, go on spring break and never come back, mentally. I've had folks that sort of go off, have fun for those 7 days, and when we come back, knowing that we only have 3 weeks when we come back, it's like their body is present, but their head is somewhere else. I've had folks that basically went to spring break and never came back. So don't be that particular student, because a lot of times those are the students that have really decent grades. And over the period of 3 or 4 weeks when we come back, they see their A become a B, become a C, D, and then they basically have to repeat the class again in the summer or the fall because they just didn't turn anything in. So with that said, we're going to look at some of the stuff. I opened up next week's folder, so you can go ahead and get sort of a head start on that as well. So let me bring this back over, and we will sort of look at the weekly folders where things are at and go from there. Let's see, this thing will work. All right, so if you look, we're basically here in our weekly folder where you can find all your stuff, or you should be able to find all your stuff, I hope, relatively ease. If you look, we have the additional rhetorical modes. This is week 9. Because we did the respondus deal, as you notice, there's been a couple weekends you just didn't really have a whole lot to do as it relates to assignments, anything turned in. And there was a reason for that, because I knew the respondus deal was going to be due, on the 29th. And also I wanted to give you time to sort of prepare for that, excuse me, as well as, have sort of a breather in between the midterm and when we start really talking about the research paper, which is what we're going to start talking about today, which will really start kicking in next week. As you can tell, we do have 3 different types of videos here to watch. I would recommend that you watch these: the compare and contrast, the cause and effect, and the classification. These are pretty much additional rhetorical modes of writing, right? We've already covered narration, description, process analysis, extended definition. We're getting into some of the research aspects where you can kind of use compare and contrast or cause and effect or classification when you're starting to draft and finalize your research paper, depending on your topic. As we move along, we will probably talk about argumentation a little bit more. There's some stuff in your textbook, in your e-text again, which is over here on pages 98 through 99, 111 through 121, that kind of give you additional information about each one of these rhetorical modes, as well as give you some, sample model writings of how those particular essays may look like if you decided to, take that approach. If you look in this particular folder, there is a piece, a Martin Luther King piece. Well, I guess there's not a Martin Luther King piece. Let's see. I may have to do that differently because nobody's actually emailed me and told me anything about this. So I guess nobody is looking for it. It's the letter from Birmingham. It's right here. So what I may have to do is go back and copy and paste and see if I can. Let me edit this a little bit. See what's going on with it. So there's not a problem. There's a King bio. Let's see if this is actually working. Yes, this works. We just celebrated Martin Luther King not too long ago, back in January. There's a little video. This is coming from the History Channel, so may take some time to look at his biography a little bit and maybe watch that particular video. It seems now I double check to make sure that this link's going to work now, and it does. So we got the right link. If you go through this particular letter, he does a little bit. It's very, for the most part, it's pretty short, as you can tell, and it does deal a lot with some of the rhetorical modes. The cause and effect, the narration, the description. So it shows you sort of a blend. And when we start talking about the research paper, you want to probably use a blend of some of these rhetorical modes when you start to draft and finalize that research paper. What the heck happened here? I don't know what's going on with Blackboard right now. They may be working on it. Let me see if I can pull this stuff back up again, because everything was working there a while ago. There we go. So I will tell you the compare and contrast video, I think it's about 6 minutes. I think the classification is probably about 6. So they're really relatively short. The cause and effect is about 12 or 13 minutes. So you might want to give yourself a little bit of time for that. I would probably maybe watch these, and then if you still had issues or some questions, obviously you can email me. You can always go to these page numbers in this e-text book and read that, or you can go back to YouTube, which is basically where I found a lot of this, and type in compare and contrast videos or cause and effect to see if you can get additional information if you're still having some issues with that. So really, that's sort of this week. You don't really have anything due again this Sunday because I wanted to give you sort of a break between the midterm and when we start talking about the research paper. But you can, if you go back to your lessons and look at the next week's stuff, which is basically sort of week 10 and 11, which sort of deals, well, it's really week 10 because we turn it in before we really get into week 11. But it starts on the 10th. I'm going to go ahead and open it out, and it goes through the 17th. So you do have something due when we look at our calendar on Sunday, March 17th, and that's going to be your research paper proposal. So you don't have necessarily anything due on March 10th, which is this Sunday, but the following Sunday you do. Now, again, there is a Dropbox already open for the 17th. You can send me drafts of your proposal if you want. You can submit your proposal before the 17th if you think have everything down that you need to have down, so you don't necessarily have to wait until March 17th. But that's when our next due date is going to be. And if you look at this particular folder, again, week 10, you do have some information that sort of talks a little bit more about the purpose of research writing and steps in developing a research paper. You have some information in your book, but you also can use this sort of as a supplemental material. Go through. Some of y'all, if you're just getting out of high school, I hope have done some research paper type stuff. Some of you may have not. done a research paper in a while, or maybe never at all, depending on where you went to high school and all that type of stuff. But um, hopefully you've done some sort of a type of research at some point. Here's another thing about developing the proposal. You're going to want to choose your topic, narrow down your topic, explore your topic in writing. Take a couple, take basically between now and the 16th or so to do a little bit of preliminary research on your topic, which we're going to look right now. We're going to look at the topics and the deal with your proposal. So if you clicked on this, here's your Dropbox, just like any other Dropbox. The first thing we need to do to be able to make sense of your proposal is I'm going to go ahead and download the proposal first. And then we're going to look at the research paper topics, because what's going to happen is you're going to have to pick a research paper topic to be able to answer the 5 questions on your proposal. Otherwise, you're not going to know what to do, and it's just going to be confusing to you if you don't go in that order. So let me go and download the research paper topics. There's a lot of them. I'm not going to sit here and, well, I might be able to read some of these. I mean, they're pretty much self-explanatory. There's about 24 of them, really. That's why I don't necessarily want to bore you with reading off on every single one of them, but we might be able to go through it really quickly. So the first step that you're going to need to do is realize that this paper has to be longer, right? You need to use MLA 9, double space, Times New Roman 12. Some of y'all, when you are still turning in essays 1, 2, 3, and 4, for whatever reason, have not really mastered that MLA 9 format. And we talked about that the first 2 weeks of the semester. So if you need to go back and look at a YouTube video or whatever you got to do, Purdue Al, some of y'all are missing easy points because you're not following the correct essay format. So, I mean, some of y'all are losing like a letter grade just because you're not indenting all your paragraphs. You don't have your last name and page number in the top right-hand corner. You don't have a proper essay title centered. You're not using, possibly works cited pages if you're quoting stuff, which that's, we're going to talk about summarizing, paraphrasing, and quoting because you're going to need to do it with this particular paper. So if you look here, the length of the actual paper needs to be 6 to 8 pages in length or 1,500 to 2,000 words with at least 6 scholarly or academic sources, plus a works cited page. So, excuse me. So what you're going to need to do, and really when it comes to the annotated bibs, is when you're going to need to get these 6 sources. You're probably going to need to have at least 2 or 3 in mind for the proposal. But you're going to need to go to a library, whether it's a college library, our library, a high school library, a public library. 4 sources need to come from a library, which is basically going to be 2 academic books or scholarly books and 2 academic or scholarly journal articles. So 4 sources have to come from some library. Your other 2 sources to round out the 6 need to come from some scholarly or academic website. Anything that ends in .gov, .org, .edu are usually credible. You can use some .com sites, but you want to be careful because not everything that is basically uploaded and written on the internet can be, considered truths. We will have sort of a virtual library orientation video that you can sort of follow, and it will basically detail how to find, journal articles, use Galileo, that type of stuff when you go to the library. And it'll go through how to use the CRAP test when it talks about, verifying academic sources and that type deal. So you will need at least 6 sources, and you will need a works cited page. Disregard this in December. It's basically going to be April. I wasn't able to change this, I guess, since I used it last time. But from going back to our checklist, it looks like the actual research paper final draft is going to be due on Sunday, April 28th. By the usual 11:59. So if you look at it, today's the 6th of March. April 6th is 1 full month. and then you got 1, 2, 3 weeks after that. So that, what is that? 4, 5, 6. You're basically going to have about 6 weeks to work on the various modifications of your draft and that type stuff. Again, just because you got 6 weeks doesn't mean I would wait 6 weeks, because you got assignments that are going to be due that relate to your research paper topic before then. And one is the proposal, which we're going to talk about because that's going to be due not this Sunday, but next. So if you look, here's your choices rather. You got 23, 24. The 24th choice is the writer's choice. If you don't like the first 23, and you know that you have something else in mind that you can find 6 scholarly sources on, 2 books, 2 journal articles, and 2 websites, and can do the 6 to 8 pages, I need to know before you start typing and submitting that proposal. I need to know where you're going to go with it, what your particular topic is, so you don't get to page 4 and can't go any further with it. So the first 23, like I said, all of these are sort of relevant within the last 10, 15 years, meaning if you go out and do your research correctly, I can guarantee you can find at least 6 or more sources on all 23 of these topics. It just depends on how you go about approaching it. The first one, homelessness. Who is to blame? We know there's a lot of homelessness issues going around in the world today, especially locally. If you live in Camden County, you probably are seeing more and more, it seems like, each and every other month. If you live in Brunswick, you definitely seen, like where I live, there's a lot of you start seeing homeless people downtown. You start to see them around Target, Sam's Club, the gas stations, on the corners, in neighborhoods, Walmart. I mean, they're around a lot more than they were 20 years ago. Bigger cities, obviously, LA, Chicago, Tokyo, Mexico City, Miami, Jacksonville, Savannah, Atlanta, they're going to have a big homeless problem now as well. And usually with homelessness comes, the drugs, the prostitution, a lot of that other stuff going on. So again, who is to blame? Is it the actual individual? Is it society at large? Is it the government? Is it a little bit of, all 3 or 4 things? Because I really don't think that, when people wake up, especially when they're growing up and still have, their parents and everything around them, I don't think anybody really wakes up and say, you know what, when I grow up, I want to be a homeless person. I don't think that. It's just like when, if you know somebody that's addicted to drugs or alcohol, I don't think, when they're 5 years old, they are, saying, hey, I want to go out and be basically addicted to crack, or I want to drink myself to death with Jack Daniels when I turn, 34. I don't think folks wake up thinking that, believing that, wanting that. I think they're sort of conditioned over time, their environment, their situation in life. Something happens for them to get to that point, because somebody just doesn't become an alcoholic or a drug addict and over one night. They don't just wake up and say, that's what I want to do. It has to be something constant. They have to be around it. um, and maybe it's the people. Maybe it could be family members, could be friends, could be a little bit of both. Could be a girlfriend or a boyfriend, could be a husband or wife that introduced you. Could be your own kids if you're old enough. Sometimes the kids introduce the parents and the parents introduce the kids. It's a sad reality that we live in 2024, but you see that a lot. Number 2 is a really good topic, still sort of in the national and local media debate. Should marijuana be legalized at a national level? Certain states have legalized it, but certain states are still kind of slow and kind of on the fence about it. So you can do a problem solution paper, a pro and con. That would be really good. I know, in the past, a lot of students have really liked writing on that particular topic. Number 3, how to detect bias in news media. This has really become more of an issue over the last maybe 15 or 20 years, because of the, we have 24-hour news channels. We have, the internet that's pretty much on. It never shuts off, especially social media, Twitter or X, Facebook, Instagram. MySpace, I guess, is still rolling around out there somewhere. But everybody thinks they are an expert, and with news, and they like to post their 2 cents in. But the media has definitely changed. I mean, compared to earlier 2000s and later 90s, and especially in the 80s, you used to be able to go to your local news channel, your newspapers, or even the national news and be able to trust whoever's giving you the news. Now there's a lot of this different fact check, checking and checkers and all this stuff. And with AI coming out a little bit more, you can pretty much rewrite whatever you want to rewrite into any kind of slant or bias that you want to, have it doctored up and look really professional, and have it up on your social media page within hours. And that stuff gets, kind of viral, and it goes off in its own direction. But you don't really know if it's legit or true or whatever the case may be. So you want to be, especially now in 2024, when we have elections coming up in November. We just had the primaries, I guess, yesterday. And it looks like we're down to the same two candidates we were back in 2020, which is Trump or Biden. So we have that going on again too. And between now and November, you're going to have a lot of the media, both on the left and the right, are going to come up with all kinds of different biases and crazy stories. And you're going to have to be intelligent enough to, basically, sift through all the BS, because a lot of it's going to be BS. Number 4, why has social media made people less connected to reality? There again, because it's instantaneous, it's 24/7. Anybody that has a smartphone, an Apple Watch, I mean, you can connect to the internet pretty much anytime, any place, any day of the week, any hour of the day. It just never shuts down unless you basically are asleep. Number 5 is really it's an event that's basically happening now. It's been happening since the beginning of time. It really sort of came in more, become more of an issue back in October, is the conflict history of Israel and Palestine. Now, some of these you're going to have to be careful, because they've, had movies, documentaries, books. I mean, there's been 800-page books written on Israel and Palestine. Your paper only needs to be 6 to 8 pages. Don't give me a book. Only when I say 6 to 8, I really just mean 6 to 8. So you might want to find a little niche, or narrow down your topic to just focus on a particular lens of the conflict, because otherwise, I mean, you're going to find research, 12 times over about this particular conflict. And it's going to get to the point where, as you start with your annotated bibs, which is the second step to this, you don't want to get too carried away with the research, because over time, sometimes that happens, and you get so wound up in the research, before you know it, you have 29 sources that you're going to have to sort of narrow down to the 6 best. So just be wary of that, and be mindful. That's why I say, because there's 21 students in this class, I got 4 other classes that are going to do the research paper as well. I don't have time to read everybody's 6 sources. You're going to have to go out and read those 6 sources on your own. You're going to have to determine which ones are the best, which ones are not so good, because over time, you're going to want to pick up quotations. You're going to want to pick up passages that you can either paraphrase or summarize, because the whole key concept of research paper is you need to use those quotations and those sources throughout your particular paper. Otherwise, you're not writing a research paper and you're not following instructions. So if you're not using research in your research paper when it gets to the 28th of April, then I don't see how you're even going to make a C on the paper, because you don't have quotations. You don't have your sources in there. And just attaching a works cited page is not helpful. You got to quote, you got to paraphrase, you got to summarize throughout those 6 to 8 pages from your 6 sources. And again, as we get closer to April, we will talk a little bit more about how to summarize, quote, paraphrase, if you haven't done that, or if it's been a while. Going back, number 6, what is the correlation between stress levels and procrastination? Especially if you are a parent, and working adults and a college student, you have a lot of stress levels that sort of relate to maybe procrastination. By nature, human beings are generally kind of lazy and like to procrastinate anyway. But I can see that really being a good study to kind of doing a research paper on. Number 7, is there a one size fit all strategy for education? U.S. Nursing shortage causes and potential effects of the nation's health, especially after COVID. And it's hard to believe it's been 4 years since the world sort of changed and went into hibernation. I did have a student in one of my eCampus courses last semester from Atlanta do that particular topic, and he gave me darn near 15 pages. So I know if you're going to do that, if you're thinking of going into the nursing field, you have enough to use there. Number 9, how does cyberbullying affect one's health? Of course, again, if you got Instagram, X, various, Facebook pages, Messenger, cyberbullying just does not, impact kids. Certain adults get cyberbullied. So you can kind of talk a little bit about that if you want to take more of the adult approach instead of the kid approach. Maybe you have some experience as being a kid that, possibly was cyberbullied. Maybe your kids have been cyberbullied. Because the difference between being bullied at school and being bullied, via the internet is you can at least go home for, 8, 12 hours. It can kind of stop, right? You can go home, go to sleep. With the internet, if you're constantly on Facebook and stuff, depending on, what's going on, you can't necessarily shut that down unless you just, shut everything off internet wise. And that's kind of hard to do because now we pretty much live on the internet. Everything that we do has some sort of computer component to it, whether it's email, music, communication with family or friends long distance. Everything is, web based at this point. Um, are electric vehicles indeed better for the environment? Again, you can do a pro and con or problem solution with that. A lot of folks would say no, just because of what they've read and watched over the last couple years. Other people would say, depending on where they're living, may like and entertain the whole idea of electric vehicles. Number 11, methods of sex trafficking prevention. If you live, outside of Interstate 95, 16, or 75, then you definitely know, um, besides being a corridor for drugs, this, 95, 16, and 75 is also a corridor for sex trafficking. So just because they're going out and kidnapping, young women or young men or whatever the case may be, kids, a lot of times they are throwing them up. It's sort of the new age of prostitution. Big city hubs like Jacksonville, Savannah, Columbus, Macon, Valdosta, because it's a big college town. So is Statesboro to some degree. I mean, obviously Atlanta, you got the airports. That's a big hub. I believe within the last few years, I think Savannah and Jacksonville have had issues with sex trafficking that they've actually busted a few um, groups coming and going, from Miami and New York and that type deal. So it's definitely out there. Um, they're getting kind of slick about how they try to recruit people, promising them of, fame and riches, either in entertainment or movies or a modeling career. And before you know it, you're snatched up in a van and hauled tail to Atlanta to be shipped out of the country. It happens. They've made movies. There's documentaries about it. Um, it's not just going into your local Walmart and seeing, hey, I like this girl or I like this boy here. I'm gonna wait till they come out and I'm gonna hit them over the head and kidnap them. I mean, they're getting a little bit more sophisticated. Number 12 really deals with sort of the COVID leftover aspects of COVID, but we can think of bird flu, pig flu, all kinds of different other viruses. But basically, it's virus prevention strategies during pandemics. 13 is really a good one. Obesity in childhood causes impacts and prevention. Of course, if you don't want to focus on childhood, you can focus on adulthood, because some folks are, they sort of keep themselves really in fit, eat the right things when they're kids, but the minute they become adults and have stressors and start to procrastinate on stuff and have to go to work and start having families, and you start to, gain the weight. It's harder to lose the weight because of, metabolism, and it could be genetics. It could just be, I mean, you just don't have time to go to the gym. Um, but now too, it seems like it's easier for some people to go to McDonald's or go to these fast food restaurants, x x amount of times each week. I don't think it's getting any cheaper. I don't know if it's cheaper really to go there to, health wise, it probably isn't. I mean, it seems on paper, yeah, it's probably cheaper to go there in Walmart and get some, fresh stuff to make, make a fresh homemade hamburger instead of getting one of this greasy slops going to slap down on you. That's probably been under the lights for a couple of weeks. Um, but it's easier, especially if you live a busy life and you have multiple mouths to feed, kids and that type deal. But it becomes a problem because if your children see that, hey, it's easier to go to Burger King and get a couple of Whoppers every night, well, when that kid becomes, your age and starts having kids, they're going to do the same thing. So it becomes a vicious cycle where nobody really learns from it. They just see the easiness. It's easy to have somebody else cook the meal than to go to the store and get something healthy that you have to go home and then cook because you're tired, right? If you work 10-hour days and then let's say you go to school, you got another 4 or 5 hours that you're devoting to that. You barely have time to eat, shower, and go to sleep if you try to fit everything else in a 24-hour day. It becomes problematic, but you can see the reason, especially for single parents, that could be the easiest way to go, especially if you're a single mother or father and you have 5 kids. Um, all within relatively a young age who can't really operate the stove and maybe having issues with operating the microwave. 14, psychological disorders among older adults caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Again, you can kind of substitute COVID-19 pandemic. You can just focus on psychological disorders if you want to. It doesn't necessarily have to be older adults. It could be younger adults or it could be kids. 15 is the deadly fungi pandemic in The Last of Us actually possible? Again, that's sort of like a book or a episodic TV show. You can kind of, if you're into that, you could possibly talk a little bit more about the fungi pandemic. I did have a few students that liked that topic last semester. 16 is mushroom foraging a safe hobby? Why or why not? And we're not talking about the mushrooms that will take you on a journey if you eat enough of them. We're talking about the, sort of like the wild mushrooms. I think in Savannah there's an actual person. I think you got to kind of sign up for classes that will take you out in the woods and help you sort of pick out the good mushrooms for the bad ones. Basically, you can eat these, but if you eat those, you're going to die within a couple of minutes. So that could be something. And some folks find that as a hobby, um, strangely enough. 17, what real life dangers did cowboys in the Old West have to face? That's just really sort of a fun topic I threw up in there to kind of distinguish between the other ones. You could probably have a lot of fun with that depending on how you want to go about it. Number 18, what are the different types of phishing and how can you protect your information online? We know anytime that you have an email, even now in text message, um, besides throwing out fake emails that try to either steal your identity or your bank accounts, they're getting your cell phone numbers now and sending you links, texting you stuff that way, or giving you phone calls. So as we move along, 2025, 2026, I mean, there's going to be an increase with technology as it relates to the bad guys trying to get your information because they want to get into your bank account. They want to open up, 15 different credit cards in your name so they can go buy their stuff too, and do it for free, right? Because they're basically using you for them to just sort of sit back. I mean, you got this dark web and everything. If they get a hold of your credit card number, they can go and make fake credit cards with that number on it and sell it to anybody who wants to buy them. And before you know it, you got really high interest rates and credit card charges on one of your credit cards. And sometimes people don't know that until a month later because they don't check their credit card statement like they would maybe their bank statement. But be mindful of that. 19, what are the benefits and risks of backyard beekeeping? Number 20, what are the benefits and risks of raising chickens in your backyard? Some folks may still want to or are doing raising the chickens. Again, you can get, it could be cheaper. Eggs are starting to come down now, but they're still expensive in certain places, I'm sure. You can get fresh farm eggs, that type deal. 21, is the Korean skincare method actually effective? 22, how did locomotives, basically trains, shape American industry? If you live out toward Waycross or Jessup, I'm sure you probably deal more with the train industry out there, the railroad. Number 23, what are the health benefits associated with regular yoga practice? Some of y'all might do the yoga practice as it relates to an exercise technique or a way to reduce stress. And again, the 24 is that writer's choice. I just need to kind of know where you plan on going with your topic before you really get started. So again, those are 24. You only need to choose one. You need to choose it before you start your annotated bibs, or annotated bibs, of course, and your proposal. Your annotated bibs is going to happen after you turn in your proposal. So let's pull up the proposal questions. And I give you an example, a model example of what a quality proposal should look like. So you're going to have 5 questions. Each one of these questions are basically worth 20 points. I want you to sort of answer the 5 questions in order, because if you answer them in order, your answers to those questions, to those paragraphs, will build your paragraph. So if you see here, this is what I was talking about. This is that sample paper from a student that completed this. And if you look, each one of his paragraphs answers one of these questions. So the first paragraph is the answer to question 1. The second paragraph is the answer to question 2. The third paragraph is the answer to question 3, so on and so forth. So you really should have a 5-paragraph like essay here when you're doing that. So I think the questions are pretty self-explanatory. If you do look over here, it gives you some guidance about this particular sample one. Again, this is the one that made an A. So if you follow this one, you should be on your way to an A. This really should probably be the easiest assignment for this semester, because we sort of segue. You go from being the easiest, which is your proposal, to one that's going to be a little bit more challenging with the annotated bib, which comes up next. So if you look, number 1, what is your thesis or research question? The thing about your topic you want to find out. Your topic must be opinionated and well phrased and formulated rather than a petty observation about your topic. So give me a tentative thesis or give me some kind of research question that you want to know the answer to as it relates to one of those 24 research paper topics. Number 2, how do you plan to support this thesis or research question? So again, look at the hint. What I'm asking you to basically tell me is this question does not really focus on the sources you will use. You will see that in question 3 and 4 coming up, but it is a question of the techniques, the type of paragraph, style you plan on employing. It is like an analysis of your analytical style. You can briefly provide an outline of your paper if you like. Otherwise, I need to know, are you going to do argumentative paper? Are you going to do a problem solution paper? Are you going to do a pro and con paper? Are you going to do a classification paper? Are you going to do cause and effect? Are you going to do, compare and contrast? That's what I'm asking for you to sort of look at when it comes to question 2 and how to answer that. Number 3 and 4 sort of go together to some degree, but I noticed too, because you basically only have about 10 days, 11 days to do the proposal. I understand you're probably not going to be able to get all your 6 sources within these 11 days, and that's fine. I understand that. What I would hope by the time we get to the 16th of March, you're going to find at least 2 to 3 reliable scholarly sources that you can kind of mention and talk about. Now, that could be your 2 books and 1 website. That can be 2 journal articles in 1 website. That can be 2 journal articles in 1 book. That can be 2 websites and 1 journal article. Some kind of combination there where I'm actually seeing that you are taking the next 11 days fairly seriously as it relates to this particular proposal assignment, as well as your actual research paper topic. Because when we get to number 4, it's asking you at this stage. So if you only find 2 to 3 sources, basically I want to know which one of the 2 or 3 at this stage is your best source. What makes it your best source, and what sources do you think you might need? Well, of course, if you only have 2 sources by the time you get to March 16th, you need to find 4 additional sources. Or if you only have 3 sources by the time you get to the 16th, you need to find 3 additional sources. So in some ways, those I'm looking at your sources, but at the same time, I can't ask you to go out and get all 6 in a period of 11 days because realistically, I know that's not going to happen. But as we get closer to spring break, I would say, take between now and maybe April 1st and start narrowing down your 6 sources. Because again, if you got stuff that you need to do or want to do or don't want to do any work, I would get as much of this research done before the period of April 1st through April 7th, because that's our spring break. When we come back on April 8th, this paper is due basically 2 Sundays from that 7th. So you're not going to have a lot of time. And if you wait until the 8th to do some of this stuff, you're going to really feel the pressure, especially if you're taking math and a nursing class, or you got something else going on, you're working 40 hours a week. You're not going to want to, stay up really late, I would hope, and try to wrap a lot of this stuff up within those last 21 days. It just wouldn't make sense to me. I mean, I wouldn't want to do it. So I would say, and I usually tell people, if you don't want to do a whole lot of work over spring break, then get whatever you need to get done before April 1st. That way you can kind of have a little breather if you're going on a vacation, with your kids or whatever. You won't have to worry about so much between those 7 days. Now, if you're not doing much, if you're not going anywhere, then I would take those 7 days and, just go ahead and start drafting the paper. That way you don't have to, again, feel the rush when we come back on the 8th, because it's going to be a rush. You're going to go to sleep on the 8th and wake up, and it's going to be May 1st, and basically the semester's over at that point. So don't wait till the last minute to do this stuff. Number 5, what is the whole point of the topic? Besides, hey, Mr. Wilson said I need to write a research paper. I want to get a good grade. What I'm really asking for there is, who else would find your research paper interesting, your topic interesting? If you were going to publish your particular essay as an article online or in a newspaper or something of that nature, who else out in the world that knows how to read English would relate and find your research interesting? That's what the whole purpose. Why is this particular topic something that not only are you interested in, how can it be an interest of a bigger universal audience is what I'm looking for. So again, about a good paragraph for each would do the job. That would build up your 5-paragraph proposal. Again, you're going to use the MLA 9 format. You're going to have your header. You're going to have a tentative title. The tentative title could be your paper title. It needs to be something more than just proposal research paper. I need to see some kind of catchy title there. Some of y'all are not doing that with Essay 3 or Essay 4, so you are losing credit. The other thing is, because I didn't do it here, but you need to have your last name and your page number up here in each one of your right-hand corners. And you need to have, your paragraphs indented. Some of y'all have, a couple paragraphs indented. Some of them are left alone. You need to have all your paragraphs, and you need a double space and use Times New Roman 12 throughout. That's the proposal. That's what's going to be due on Sunday, March 17th. So again, you're going to need to pick a topic first, do a little bit of research on that topic so you can have a really good idea. The thing is with the research paper, because it is sort of a little bit more involved, by the time we get to the 17th and you turn in your proposal, the proposal is acting as the green light or the check mark. Meaning if you answer all those questions and it seems like you've done a little bit of research and taken this thing the last 12 days or whatever kind of seriously, then that check mark or that green light gives you the ability to move on to the second stage, which would be the annotated bibs. It's going to let me know, and it's going to let you know really fast, hey, I really have a good topic or I don't. So that's why I say take between now and maybe the 15th or 16th of March, really weigh out which particular research paper topic you want to do, because after the 17th, you're married to it. That's going to be your topic from the 17th of March to the 28th of April, because you can't be flipping back and forth. You can't, divorce the topic after spring break, because if you do all that, then you're going to have to go back and do a whole nother proposal. You're going to have to go back and do, because if you already started doing research, you're going to have to do a whole nother annotated bib. So you're going to be like triple, double, quadruple working yourself if you decide to flip-flop topics at the end of this month or the beginning of next month. So I would take the next 11 or 12 days, really decide on the one you want to take, and you're married to it. Because you don't want to keep flip-flopping back and forth, because that's more of a pain, and when folks do that, their grade definitely suffers. Their A's become B's, their B's become C's, their C's become D's. So whatever you pick from these 24, pick one, stick with it for the next 6 weeks. That's your topic. All right, so let's see if I can stop sharing with that. That's pretty much what I had to cover. So I hope everybody is doing well. I hope everybody, if you had additional midterms, that you did well on those. Because we did the Respondus event at, the midterm essay, as it relates to a final exam, you really don't have a final exam in this course. The final exam or the final thing is the research paper. That sort of acts as the final exam. So we really have the proposal, which is due on the 17th. We're going to start talking about the sets of annotated bibs, because there's 3 sets. So you probably have maybe that first set due before we go to spring break, and then you're going to have 2 additional sets due after spring break. And then you have the research paper. So if you're looking at, how many assignments we really have left, we only have 4 major assignments left. That's going to take us from now until, that sort of last week, first week, April, May type deal. The other thing is, and I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I'm going to go ahead and mention it now, is I know I've been telling my other classes, if you remember, we had weekly assignments, peer reviews, that type deal. We will have another peer review probably with your research paper, and maybe with the annotated bibs, we'll see. But as it relates like the Dinian and the Wolf assignment, I told some of my other students in my other classes that I would drop your lowest weekly assignments. If you want me to do that, right now, because we're after midterm, email me the one that you want me to drop. Otherwise, as it gets closer to spring break, I probably will just go through and look and see which one's the lowest and go ahead and drop it for you. I can't drop essays, meaning essay 1, 2, 3, and 4 would have to stay. I can't drop the proposal grade or the annotated bib or anything like that. It has to be one of those, weekly reading assignment or a peer review. Some folks have 0s on the peer reviews or 50s on the peer reviews, and that's why your grade is what it is. Some folks just didn't turn in a weekly assignment. That could be the other reason why your grade isn't where it is. But dropping one of those will increase your grade. Now, is it going to increase your grade from like a C to an A? Probably not. But it would probably increase your grade by 2 or 3 points, depending on where it's at. Now, if you're borderline, like if you're at an 88 and I drop one of your lowest grade, it'll probably bring you up to about 90 or 91. So you could have an A. So I'm hoping as we go through the next 7 weeks that some of those B's become A's, some of the C's become B's. But again, like I'm looking right now that somebody has a 91 in the class. For that person to keep the A, they're going to have to make a 92 or higher. Otherwise, over the next 7 weeks, if they don't make a 92 or higher, their A could be a B, could be a C. The same thing is, I have somebody here that basically has a 60, which is a D. Again, if they want to try to make that passing mark a 70 or higher, they're going to have to start making, I would say at that point, they need to make higher than 60. But, I mean, you need to start making passing grades to pass. So I would tell that person they need to start making 70s or higher. The higher, the better. Because otherwise, you're going to stay within that 60 to 69 range. And if you're trying to get into nursing, they usually want B's. They don't look, they see C's as passing, but a lot of programs say, hey, we want the best of the best. We want B's or higher. And, I've heard certain nursing students, oh, I got a 79 and had to come back and retake an English class because they wanted to have an 80 or higher. It's competition. They're just not going to take any old buddy just because you got C's. Yeah, C's give you degrees, but it's like that old saying, would you want a doctor working on your head or granny's head or your mom's head that basically were, just barely passing with the C's, having the D's all through medical school? No, you wouldn't want that. Same thing with, being a LPN and RN and stuff. We just don't want folks out there that, are used to going to Quizlet and looking up crap. If they don't know, if they can't think on their feet, then you're putting a lot of people's lives at risk. Not just the people the patients that you're caring for. You're putting that company at risk for being sued, because if you accidentally kill somebody or give somebody so much medicine that really puts them in a position where they could have died, that company is going to get rid of you first because they don't want to take the blunt of it. Because once somebody starts suing the company, they go back and look at the person and they get rid of that person first. And then sometimes that company will come back and countersue. So you're going to have two people. You're going to have the patient's family going to sue you for one on the right side of you. And then on the left, you got the company coming over because they're getting sued because you cost them somebody's life, which is going to cost them a lot of money because they're going to have to pay out. So you got to be careful of that. That's the whole purpose of going to school, to get a career in something, get a degree in something that you know how to approach it without having to, ask an AI robot, hey, how much medicine is too much for this particular person? They're diabetic. Well, if you give them too much, they could go in a coma. It could spike their sugar, or it could drop it. And then at that point, depending on their age and how fast you react, they could also die from that too. So just be wary out there about things like that. The AI programs, the Quizlet programs, all these different ways that you can, take a picture of your math program and it solves it for you. It's nice at the time, but long term, if you don't know how to do the stuff and you need to know how to do it when it comes crunch time, it's just going to be, hey, you basically wasted 2 or 4 years to get that degree and that money just for, the AI robot basically got your degree for you. You didn't really earn it. But anyway, that's enough of that. I think everybody has a good bit to do at this point. Again, you don't have to wait until the 17th to turn in the proposal if you want to go ahead and get started, since you've basically had a couple weeks where you didn't have to do anything on Sunday. But, not this Sunday. The next Sunday is when we're going to start having deadlines again. So please keep up with those. You don't want to rack up zeros because, again, 2 zeros will get you out of D. I mean, if you're already at a C, then it's going to give you an F. If you're at a B, you're probably at an F. So I wouldn't try to get, a lot of zeros. Send me your drafts or your proposal if you want me to look at them. Um, you can, be optional with tutor.com. We've got emails from the vice president because we're running out of hours. I thought we were paying that as a yearly subscription. Apparently, each time a student uses it, it costs like $23 an hour, and it's supposed to go up to 28 soon. I think we only have 300 hours left, probably less at this point because I know a lot of the math students use it as well. Um, I would only use at this point because we're at that critical level uh, of because once those 300 hours are gone, we're not going to have tutor.com for a while. So I would only use tutor.com from here on out if you really, really need it as it relates to this class. Otherwise, you can come to my in-person tutoring. If you live in Camden or Brunswick, we can, email back and forth. We can talk about that. We can do a Teams meeting, which if you are familiar during the COVID era, we had to do a lot with Teams. It's sort of like Zoom, or we can email. You can send me drafts. We can talk about email, or we can, do a phone call if that's easier as well. Just let me know where I can help you. I can't read minds, so if I don't get anything from you, I'm assuming you know what you're doing. Because I'm not going to hunt you down and ask all 21 people, hey, you know what you're doing? Hey, are you doing this right? That type deal. If you're going to need help early on, or should know if you're going to need help early on. So don't wait until 2 hours before something's due to freak out to try to get in touch with me. Because yes, over the weekends I do try to check emails, but I got two daughters, I got a wife, I got a life too outside of school, outside of work, that I try to spend time with them and basically depress all the stuff going on work wise in the brain, just like you would want when you have days off. You try to depress all of the craziness too. So again, I try to help where I can over the weekends. I did send out, if you go back and look within that first 2 weeks, a virtual, sort of like a virtual classroom that invites folks to join the team's classroom. Go back to see if you can kind of look for that. If you need it again, email me and let me know, and I can see if I can send you another one or go back and find the old one. Because Teams could be another way that you can kind of communicate with me over the weekend. That I can look at it. If it's something quick, I can answer back really fast. If it takes a little bit of time, keep in mind, we have Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off as instructors. You may have to wait up to a period of 1 day to 2 days, depending on if there's a holiday and that type of stuff. So just bear with me. I do have 4 other classes. I'm trying to go through and grade as quickly as I can, but also provide really good quality feedback. So when you get whatever the grade is, you can see it and say, okay, I need to improve with transitions, or I need to improve a little bit more with a grammar or a thesis statement. So you're not making the same mistake twice and getting counted off again for the next particular assignment. Otherwise, I hope everybody has a great rest of your week, your weekend. I know we have St. Patty's Day coming up. I guess it is on the 17th of Sunday. So if I don't talk to you between now and then, I hope everybody has a really good St. Patty's Day. And I just hope everybody else, generally overall, everybody's in good health, good spirits. It's starting to become spring. I know we're getting some of these April showers, which is probably not really helpful on the weekends. It seems like during the week it's all nice and, decent weather. And come Friday, Saturday, and Sunday is when the sky wants to sort of just, dump out on us. But hopefully as we get, closer to Easter, which I think is going to be later this month, I think it changes between March and April. Hopefully, as it gets closer to Easter, maybe the weather will start to stabilize a little bit. It won't be so bipolar. All right, so I'm going to end it there. I hope everybody has a great rest of your Wednesday. And again, either I will make another video next week that sort of talks about the annotated bibs, or one will be coming up within another week or so. Otherwise, have a good week. Bye.